STALZONE is an extraction shooter MMO set in a zone that actively wants you dead. It's got anomalies that shred you, storms that melt your health bar, and worst of all, other players. So today I'm going to be trying to beat the game as fast as possible. If I die, then I'll drop everything I have, and thanks to STALZONE for partnering with me on this video. Welcome back to Amazing Chess. Today we are surviving STALZONE. If that sounds like fun to you, then go ahead and subscribe because YouTube doesn't always recommend. The challenge begins with me and a tutorial. I'm controlling an unnamed soldier who just got knocked through a building, and a man named Yaz is on the radio saying his team is on the way. My task was simple. I had to escape, but the problem is I knew nothing about this game, and the world of STALZONE is unforgiving. Soon I'd be thrown out to survive on my own, so this tutorial was my only chance to learn the ropes while I was still safe. Opening a medicine crate to heal, I noticed two things in my inventory: a container holding an artifact and a powerful AM-17 assault rifle. The red color seems to indicate that it's a master rank item, the highest rarity in the game. Whoever I'm controlling must be a big deal. After learning the basics like ladders and crouching, I came across an overlook with 3 enemies who weren't paying attention. Then I proceeded to use them for target practice. Afterwards, enemies burst into the room and the game wanted me to switch over to the AM-17 from my sniper rifle. We traded bullets in a corridor, and then I went prone to crack through a vent where I cleared out more enemies that looked like zombified soldiers and scientists. A helicopter landed with Yaz and his team inside, and I handed over the artifact I was carrying, a shiny blue orb. As it turns out, the artifact was what the team wanted, not me, so they shot me in the head and I fell out of the helicopter and was left for dead. Then the whole compound went up in a nuclear blast. With that, the tutorial was complete and my mystery character was presumably dead. Welcome to STALZONE. That was a hell of an intro. From there, I got treated to a nice little canoe ride across the swamp where a soldier named Lyndon greeted me. Whoever I was now just arrived in the infamous zone, so the plan was to grab the free supplies, follow Lyndon, and figure out exactly what my role in all of this was. Some dark buildings introduced the night vision goggle, then Lyndon guided me through a radiation heavy area. That's where I learned how deep the armor system is. On top of resisting bullets, laceration, electricity, and fire, it also protects us from stuff like radiation and biohazards. This meant that enemies weren't the only thing who'd be trying to kill me during this playthrough. After a section about dodging hazards, I came across my first anomaly, a stationary whirlpool that was sucking in unsuspecting soldiers. I went around it, looted a hidden backpack behind a corner, and got some lore from Lyndon. He mentioned people called the Blessed who get drawn to the zone without really knowing why, and apparently there's a shaman who's able to help them. Leaving the area, we hit a crossroad between the game's 2 main factions, the Bandits and the Stalkers. He gave me a quick rundown of each, and since exploring sounded more fun than robbing people, I went with the Stalkers. As I walked on alone, the massive red explosion from the tutorial happened again, dust fell all around me, and everything went black. I woke up in Adamant's HQ, the Stalker faction base in the swamp. Apparently I was rescued by Stump, a high-ranking member of the faction, and he took me under his wing as a new recruit. He mentioned more and more people getting drawn to the zone by visions, and I admitted that I was also one of those people. He told me to keep my mouth shut because nobody likes the Blessed, and if I wanted the shaman's help with those visions, I was gonna have to go through Ottoman first. Since he's the faction leader and he doesn't meet with just anyone, Stump had me complete some tasks to prove myself. Before that though, I opened my inventory and redeemed the welcome promo code that anyone can claim for free. That got me a shotgun, buckshot ammo, and some medkits. I also got my PDA, which doubles as a quest journal and a map, and before heading out, I checked the merchant shop and realized I was broke. I did find the fence where I could sell some items. The game splits your loot into supplies, crafting items, and then trade-in items, whose only purpose really is getting turned into money. That means you never have to choose between selling or keeping something, which I appreciate in a game where surviving is already hard enough. With everything set up, I entered the open world. STALZONE'S gameplay is a hybrid between MMO and extraction shooter. The whole loop is basically going out to scavenge whatever you can find, and then trying to make it back to HQ to sell or store that loot without dying on the way. Stump's first ask was an introduction to camp raiding. I needed 3 peritonium from piggy dens and 3 bandit patches from bandit camps. Outside, the PDA displays a mini-map that highlights quest markers and enemy camps, plus a counter that would be very important for avoiding the biggest danger in the world, other players. While I was walking to the first camp, I already got alerts about 2 people from both factions dying around the map, which meant I wasn't alone. I shot down a bunch of pigs at the first den, then flanked some bandits who were busy fighting a fellow stalker. Clearing a camp of all its enemies spawns a stash with valuable loot, like upgrade materials and the quest items I was looking for. Thankfully, stashes are player side, meaning I'm not racing anyone to grab them first, so working together with random players from my faction is actually encouraged. When night fell, I headed back to store my loot from my first trip out, and I chucked a bunch of trade in items and my quest items in storage for safekeeping. At the final camp right next to the HQ, I got careless and took on 4 bandits without any cover. I did manage to get a couple, but got gunned down for my trouble. The combat system in this game is really punishing, so you shouldn't just jump into any fight. The second time around, I actually waited for some friendly NPCs to walk by the camp before joining them. Surprisingly, the camp itself was empty because another player had finished looting in the meantime. But even though I had died, the game remembered that I took out most of the bandits and I still got a stash. After collecting the loot I lost, I grabbed the stash and handed the goods to Stump. His second task was killing a player from the bandit faction, and dying would instantly fail the quest. It was time to get serious. After resupplying, the plan was to farm up some gear before hunting another player. I picked up a side quest from the fence, but while I was outside, a notification popped up. It was something I hadn't seen before, an eruption alert. The game basically wanted me to return to shelter, and so I did. On my way back, PvP alerts kept popping up all over the map, and time was ticking. I headed toward a yellow radiation symbol on the minimap, assuming it was an eruption shelter, but I couldn't have been more wrong. Suddenly, the skies turned red, and death alerts started flooding the chat, and my health bar melted. Just like that, I was dead. I respawned at the HQ, which was now packed with players who probably had the same experience. With my downtime, I browsed the armory to compare weapons, and learned that the upgrade system is pretty gradual. There was really no way to craft a mid-tier weapon without owning the lower ones first, so if I didn't want to fall behind, I was going to have to start upgrading soon. While I was talking to Stump, the death from earlier started to sink in. Even though it wasn't from a PvP fight, dying to the eruption still counted, and unfortunately I failed the quest. Missing that reward definitely sucked, but it also kind of sped things up because Stump handed me the rest of the quest line from there. I just missed out on the reward. Afterward, the quest line pointed me toward upgrading gear, which forced me to buy an assault rifle. So I made the shotgun my sidearm and started grinding in the swamps. I cleared some camps, beast dens, military outposts, and helped faction NPCs defend points. This led to me crafting my first backpack, which raised my carry weight by a lot. Clearing objectives and side quests also built standing in the faction, and eventually Ottoman heard about all the work I put in, and he decided to meet with me. Before he let me see the shaman, there was one more thing I had to do. He wanted me to figure out what happened to one of his stalkers, Kalgan. He had recently come back from the north with a strange man named Art right before both of them suddenly disappeared. Entering the dugout where their signal led put me into a quest instance. The cave was a small maze with anomalies like whirlpools and electric discharges. I worked my way through it, shooting down obstacles and getting around locked doors, all while hearing Kalgan and Art scream at each other in the distance. Eventually I heard gunshots and I found Kalgan's body full of bullets. I didn't have to look far for the killer either because Art opened fire on me from the other room. He hit hard, but I lured him around a corner and my shotgun took care of the traitor. Ottoman was not happy about the news, and to make matters worse, one of his top scouts had just been killed. His ear had been cut off, hinting at a deliberate assassination, so Ottoman asked me to solve the mystery. Asking around pointed to a shady man called Coxcomb, funny name, and breaking into his room introduced me to STALZONE'S detective mechanics. Basically, you search items around the room for clues, and under his bed I found a crate holding a mutilated ear. Disgusting. Coxcomb had already run off, so I tracked him down in the wilderness only to find his warm body. Someone had just cut his throat, and it wasn't anyone from the HQ. That outcome raised more questions than answers, but it did get me my meeting with the shaman, so I'm not really complaining. We also got his BM16 double barrel rifle, which was a nice upgrade. The shaman's hideout was close to the HQ and Lyndon was there again. The shaman revealed a lot about what the Trailblazers, the original explorers of the zone, left behind. He also explained how the Blessed started showing up. All of them are basically searching for a legendary artifact called the Blue Spear, which, if you're paying attention, was the exact same item my nameless tutorial character got shot over. That brings us to the main goal of the campaign. We need to find that sphere. Before we could though, the shaman was worried about an armed group called the Orderlies, which is kind of ironic, who openly hunt the Blessed. He wanted me to infiltrate them and pointed me to a stash of his private supplies as a head start. The quest marker led outside the zone, meaning we were officially out of the swamp. With my new BM16, I headed north and entered the roadside. Shaman's stash was halfway to the next stalker base, and I noticed the two factions' bases were much closer together on this map. On top of that, an outpost was about halfway between them, with a side objective on the screen that players were fighting over. It seemed like fun, but we just didn't have time for it. Eventually, I found the shaman's stash, which had some gear and supplies. Then I made my way over to my new headquarters, which was the fire station. The place was super crowded, and with my new respawn point set, I went looking for Jaundice, the leader of the orderlies. As Shaman warned me, these guys are dead set on wiping out every bless they can find. It didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that Jaundice was the one who got Coxcomb killed, probably because his cover was blown, especially after he asked me to find an escaped prisoner, kill him, and then bring him back his ear. Tracking him wasn't too difficult, and soon we were having a chat. He was terrified of the orderlies, and he understood that his knife didn't have a chance against my rifle, so he accepted my trade offer, cut his own ear off, and decided to lay low for a while. As a result, he got to live, Jaundice got his proof, and everybody was happy. The second meetup was at the border between both factions' territories, and since it was night, I wasn't too worried about running into enemy players. People were dying left and right up there though, so I had to be careful. The meeting point turned out to be the orderly space itself. I passed through rooms, hallways, and courtyards filled with dozens of armed men, and finally found Jaundice in his office behind a heavily armored security guard. In the cell next to him sat none other than my friend Lyndon, which wasn't a good sign. Surely Jaundice doesn't ask us to kill him as a proof of our loyalty. This is where the game lets you choose your path. I could kill Lyndon and secure the infiltration, or abort the mission altogether and start an open fight in the entire base itself. Since I felt bad for my old guide, and I really wanted to test out my new gun, I went with option 2. A cutscene played where I stabbed Jaundice in the throat with the execution knife, then cut Lyndon free. He escaped out the back door, which just left me and a base full of enemies. I took his papers off the desk and started shooting at the guards. The rifle was super strong, one-shotting orderlies with headshots, but a heavy guard almost killed me, and a bunch of soldiers burst in while I was using an ammo crate. I got stuck in a death loop for a couple of seconds, respawning right in front of their guns, but eventually I got the upper hand again, and once the main room was cleared, it was just a matter of being patient. After a lot of back and forth, I finally exited the base's door straight into the active phase of an eruption. Apparently you don't get hazard warnings while you're inside the quest area, and the door had locked behind me. Well played. Giving the orderlies papers to Shaman revealed that they'd gained a powerful ally up north. Before we could continue our conversation, a vision triggered. In this cutscene, a team of scientists argued over the Blue Sphere's powers, with their leader wanting to use them for domination. Of course he does. According to Shaman, the sphere, the zone, and the blessed are all connected, and to understand why, we had to keep hunting for it. For that, I needed to find someone named Oracle, whose telepathic gifts could help us track down the artifact. That meant my next goal was finding Condor's squad, who were supposed to be protecting the Oracle. Before I could do that though, Shaman recommended upgrading my armor for the conditions around Oracle's location. That meant grinding, which I was really trying to avoid, but radiation and bioinfection can kill you so quickly that I didn't really have a choice. So I spent some time taking side quests and gathering materials. I cleared mutant dens, discovered new enemy types, instantly died to anomalies, and got destroyed by random enemies wearing gear about 10 times better than mine. I also started hunting supply caches with a detector, which gave me a much more reliable way to stock up. Around this point, I started buying ammo and medkit pouches whenever I could. They're heavy, but the pouches themselves don't drop when you die, which means you can open them whenever you need the supplies inside. Even after losing everything, I could still respawn with emergency ammo and had healing ready to go. Slowly but surely, STALZONE was starting to feel like home. I helped other players with camps, revived stalkers in gunfights, and joined raids on high-level supply caches guarded by heavily armed soldiers. Running into friendly players was still pretty common at this stage, and teaming up made those harder objectives a lot easier. Before long, I had enough materials to craft an Aurora jumpsuit, followed by a Forager one. The armor grind was finally over, and now it was time to meet Condor and the Oracle. Obviously, Condor wasn't gonna let me see Oracle for free. Some of his men had gone missing while fighting the mutant hordes, so he sent me out to rescue them. Unfortunately, there wasn't anyone left to rescue though. Every single one of Condor's men had been ripped apart by mutants. Honestly, their deaths were tragic, but on the bright side, he let me see Oracle immediately. Mission accomplished, I guess. Oracle could track the Blue Sphere, but he was too afraid to use it. And honestly, he had a pretty good reason. The mutants were only attacking Condor's squad because Oracle had accidentally made contact with their leader telepathically, and now it was hunting them through the minds of its followers. Condor had no idea his brother was responsible, and Oracle wanted to keep it that way. I agreed to hunt down the beast and clean up his mistake without Condor ever finding out. At one point, I was far away from the fire station and carrying a lot of valuable loot, which made this the perfect time to try a mechanic I hadn't used yet: player stashes. Placing one of these bags creates a temporary storage point that lasts for a few hours. The catch is that players from my faction can't open it, but enemy players can, so hiding it somewhere safe is super important. I threw the bag in a bush and headed toward the source of telepathic resonance. The signal led me to a floating doghouse that was surrounded by a force field. I had no idea what could possibly be living inside of a floating doghouse, but the quest marker said jump, so I did. That transported me into a nightmare dimension. The entire place was a patchwork of random buildings and floating islands, all covered in an eerie purple glow. After shooting at them, they all died in one hit. None of the lost souls carried weapons, so the real danger came from ambushes and the purple plants that were scattered in the area. By anticipating where the enemies would be, I played it safe and made my way through the nightmare pretty much untouched. Near the end though, I found a convenient ammo and medkit station, which was a strong hint that a boss fight was probably coming up. Sure enough, I stepped into an open cage and got dragged straight to the beast. This fight was not gonna be easy. Oh, never mind. He dies in 2 shots. Just like that, the beast was dead, and unfortunately the Oracle was gone too. Feeling guilty for putting his brother's squad in danger, he took off before I returned. After tracking him down and promising that everything had been taken care of, I managed to convince him to help me find the blue sphere. A cutscene explained that the blessed are influenced by a powerful blue light whenever they close their eyes. That's when the signal calls out to them, and anyone who can't resist eventually loses control. Afterward, Oracle taught me a trick that could protect me from its influence. Then he pointed me to a location that was connected to the sphere. It was our only lead, and it brought me into a brand new area called the forest. The forest sits near the factory, which was home to the bar that multiple NPCs have been talking about. Since I was really far away from safety, my new plan was simple. I'd check out Oracle's location first and head straight to the bar and set up a new base. Getting there should unlock better quests and resources, but there was just one problem. The forest was full of stronger enemies, and the bar connected both factions. That meant PvP was right around the corner, and this was where the run got difficult. Oracle's directions led me to an underground facility occupied by one scientist. The old man was not happy to see me, and I basically had to drag every useful piece of information out of him. According to the scientist, the blessed were not chosen by anything supernatural. From his point of view, we'd all been infected by a brain virus that forced people toward the zone. He knew about the Trailblazers and believed that the blue sphere was responsible for the signal, but he needed an artifact called the receiver to trace its exact location. To help me find it, he handed over 2 radars, an area scanner for locating the general signal, and a handheld detector to narrow it down. With the radars in hand, I left the facility and headed for the bar. I could hear gunshots deep in the forest, so I looped around through stalker territory and approached through the railroad instead. I was carrying a ridiculous amount of loot, but turning back wasn't really an option. The factory was massive. Before I could get there, I had to make my way through streets filled with anomalies and mutant nests. A group of patrolling stalker NPCs helped clear a path, while constant beeps on my minimap warned me that players were nearby. Luckily, every single one of them was friendly, so I slipped through the factory and made it into the bar with all of my loot intact. The bar is a huge neutral safe zone where both stalkers and bandits can hang out without killing each other. Now that I wasn't in any danger, I took this chance to check out the gift Shaman had given me earlier. His combat suit wasn't as good as my forager armor, but the sniper rifle was definitely going to be useful later on. I set my spawn point, stored my loot, and went back outside to search for the receiver. Leaving through the railroad turned out to be a mistake, as I got hit by a massive amount of radiation from seemingly nowhere. I was forced to abandon that route and cut through the woods instead. On the way, I noticed a yellow symbol sitting at the top of a military checkpoint. It wasn't related to my quest, so I ignored it, but that was actually a mistake, and you'll see exactly why in a second. After finding a random stack of toilet paper that another player had abandoned in the woods, I started using the radars. Tracking the receiver was basically a mini game in and of itself. First, I switched the area scanner between short and medium range until it picked up a signal. Then I pulled out the handheld detector and had a few minutes to find the exact spot where the reading was strongest. The signal eventually led me to a small camp where a masked man was lying with a backpack. His name was Ka, and he spoke like a medieval wizard who had wandered into the wrong game. He promised to give me the receiver though, but only if I could solve his riddles. The first riddle went like this. In the forest where the ground had dropped away, a clever snake had found a place to stay. To that place that God once called his home, the wisdom of Ka will lead you to roam. But that place was abandoned by God because of the gestures that people forgot. There you'll find a clue who's so true, trust Ka tells no tales to you. Judging from this riddle, I was looking for some kind of abandoned church. While searching for a building that matched, I tested my new sniper rifle on a nearby army base, and that fight made one thing clear. This forest enemies were on a whole different level. If I was gonna beat this game in under 20 hours, then spending the next few hours grinding would definitely defeat the whole point, so I just decided to push through and make do with whatever the game gave me. Eventually I came across a building that could definitely pass for a church. There was a hidden shelf under the floor, but it was completely empty. Then, as I walked outside, the nearby camps reset and a horde of freshly spawned mutants shredded me on the doorstep. Perfect timing. Things went better the second time around. I spotted an actual church floating above a massive chasm because, well, a normal church would have been too easy. A gust of wind anomaly launched me across the gap and straight into its entrance. Sure enough, this was the location I was looking for. The second riddle went like this: where the golden dome shines bright in the sky, walk on with courage, let no demons come nigh. That way Ka did once pass through, and left a hint for travelers beneath the roof. Find the ruins of that home so bright, then climb beneath the golden light. The serpent's wisdom you shall see, but beware, a demon waits for thee. Uh-oh. This one was basically handed to me. When I opened the map, another yellow military checkpoint appeared on top of a building with golden domes. There weren't any other matching rooftops nearby, so I made my way straight there. The third riddle led me to a lake. Jumping into the water teleported me straight back to Ka, who had finally handed over the receiver. Before I left, he warned me that a huge battle was coming. I returned to the underground facility, but the scientist had somehow disappeared. Blood covered the room, and there wasn't any sign of where he'd gone. Before I could investigate, Shaman called me through the PDA and ordered me back to the fire station. The orderlies were there causing trouble, and he finally had information about the blue sphere. Shaman's call sounded urgent, so I rushed over. He shared news of the orderlies turning their hunts into an all-out war on the Blessed across the zone. Their leader was a legendary stalker named Morg, who's rumored to come back to life whenever he's killed. Regardless, for the search to continue, the orderlies had to be dealt with for good. Shaman took the receiver to work on locating the sphere, while my job was to join up with the Blessed combat squad and deal with the war. Considering how tough the forest enemies were, I wasn't really sure if my gear could keep up, but Shaman handed me a huge pile of supplies and wished me good luck. After joining the combat squad, we crashed the meeting between the orderlies and their new allies. I gunned down the meeting, left with a prisoner, and learned that the rogue commander had decided to back them on his own. With his troops and resources behind them, they were now pretty much unstoppable. I was gonna have to take him out in order to cut off the supply chain. Before I could finish with Shaman though, another vision triggered, and this one, the scientist from the blue sphere flashback was calling everyone to join the zone, pretty much influencing their minds. And this was the infamous Blue Eyes. That vision threw me straight into a nightmare where I was weaponless and being hunted by a beast. I ran and parkoured my way out of the mental prison, and when I finally made it out, I was back on the hunt for the sphere. Colonel Vlasov's base sits in the Dead City deep within bandit territory. The plan was to weaken his troops out in the war zone first, then close in and raid the base itself. It wasn't going to be easy, so Shaman granted me the Seeker's Falcon. This was a powerful blue tier armor that put my forager suit to shame. My first task was getting Shaman a bunch of chevrons from Vlasov's officers in the forest, and luckily I'd already collected a bunch of those while hunting for Ka's church earlier. Next up was killing 2 of Vlasov's lieutenants. They basically flagged the camps where the lieutenants spawned, and this is what those yellow checkpoints were all about. These fights were actually pretty hard. The guards hurt and respawned fast, downing me and any other players who came to help me out. This quest works like a mini raid event, with players gathering at checkpoints and then banding together to challenge the lieutenants. Even in groups of 5 though, they were so overpowered that they could kill us in seconds. You actually need to damage the lieutenant yourself in order to get credit, so I was gonna have to carry my own weight, but eventually I got the hang of it and I was able to take down the first lieutenant. The second one actually killed me though, and his death summary showed that he was wearing full veteran gear. Thankfully someone else finished the job though, and the quest was validated anyway. With Vlasov's troops weakened, I could close in for the final blow. At this point, I had to choose between 2 sub-factions to help out with the raid, and they were Frontier or Rise. I ended up siding with Rise because I liked their vibe better and received a quest to find their lost sappers. That meant we were going to have to travel to the most northern part of the map into the territory of even stronger enemies. We were officially in the endgame. I left the bar fully stocked and headed for the north. Another stalker ran alongside me for a while before we eventually parted ways, and minutes later, his death notification popped up on my screen. Poor guy. Followed the team's blood trail into a deep cave, a cramped maze of chasms, tunnels, and drop downs where chasing the lost team's flares pushed the game's parkour system to its limit. After what felt like hours of crawling around, I came face to face with Vagant himself. This guy can turn your screen completely black for a few seconds, so I ran laps around the arena shooting whenever I had a chance while trying to memorize the layout of the area. After a few laps, Vagant eventually fell. The quest was tedious, but the reward was definitely worth it. The Rise faction rep handed me a veteran tier M1A assault rifle. With this gun, I entered Colonel Lasov's lair and, as expected, it melted through enemies like a hot knife through butter. I pushed deeper into the base, killing his men and hitting all the resupply points that the game handed me. I did have a bad run-in with a heavy guard that had master rank gear, but I respawned, cleared the area again, and made it all the way to Vlasov himself. He tried to pull a fast one on me, but I chased him down and cornered him in a room full of his men. Vlasov had a ton of HP, but the stage had plenty of cover, so I just worked through the rooms and drop downs, taking out guards and putting shots into Vlasov whenever he came into view. Before long, the traitor bit the dust, and as a reward, Shaman offered me another veteran tier weapon. While I was dealing with Vlasov, Shaman did his part too, and thanks to the receiver, he got Oracle on board to locate the spear for us. While Oracle was meditating with it, orderlies came into the hideout and took him into a helicopter while we just watched. After calming down a very angry Condor, I began the search. An orderly defector confirmed that Oracle was still alive and that Morg himself was holding him captive. To rescue Oracle, I was gonna have to go to the orderly's headquarters and take out Morg himself. My gear was strong now, but I still couldn't brute force my way through the game. I had to do things the right way, and that meant passing as a fresh recruit and sneaking around security into the restricted areas. The defector's info was enough to sell my recruit story, and from there, a big detective quest started. Exploring the complex and listening to NPCs gave me the information I needed and eventually pushed me to enter the infirmary. A security guard that was literally named Wise Guy blocked the deeper sections, but lockpicking a wounded officer's bedside table got me his pass. From there, I knocked out a clerk and snuck through the vents into the holding area. That's when I found Oracle and my old friend Lyndon, who got himself captured again. But Oracle did not want to leave, saying that he'd be more useful locating the spear from inside of here, and was somehow convinced that Morg wouldn't hurt him. Oracle told me the exact location of the blue sphere that he managed to narrow down, and he also pointed me to a side protection device that the orderlies kept on site that would help me push through the Napnudger's influence. On top of that, Lyndon was grateful that I spared his life back in Jaundice's base, so he offered to help distract the guards on the way out. One intense gunfight later, we reached the rooftops and hijacked the orderly's own helicopter. That's when Morg showed up. Apparently, he only wanted to talk and warned us against Shaman and the sphere's influence. Not falling for his tricks, we flew off anyway, and then a massive storm took out the helicopter. That's when the visions caught up with us again. The third nightmare was the longest and the worst one yet. I had nothing to fight with, and a horde of mutants were chasing me. I did my best to manage my stamina, hopping between ladders and platforms in order to make it out. Eventually, I woke up to Condor's welcoming face, and he wasn't really too happy that his brother had stayed behind. But that was gonna have to wait because Shaman had launched a full-scale attack on the orderlies across the entire zone. With the side device in my bag and the location in my PDA, there was only one destination left. What waited there was an hour-long gauntlet running straight to the blue sphere. My objective was reaching the Napnudger and shutting it down so that Shaman's forces could push in. The problem with that was that shutting it down would open the same door for Morg's troops though. That meant I could only hope our side came first, and backup wasn't coming either, so we were gonna have to do this solo. The game threw tunnels at me that were packed with anomalies and mutant ambushes. Checkpoints were very few and far between, and if I lost focus for even a moment, then all of that strong gear would mean nothing. Past the tunnels, I fixed the broken lift and made my way through rooms that were defended by snipers. An entire city district stood between us and the Palace of Culture, and the whole neighborhood was basically one giant military camp full of zombie soldiers. Running from enemies into what looked like cover usually just led into more patrols. Then a mutant abomination charged at me, and my gun had nothing to say about it. Without thinking, I ran past the thing into a boiler room where it got itself stuck. Then I cheesed it from a safe spot, and it eventually went down. As I killed more soldiers, the palace was getting closer. That's when a second abomination tried to show up from around the corner. This one ran on all fours and it was way too fast to outrun, and I actually died trying to open a locked door. The second time around, it came out of nowhere and two-shot me. Third time, I accidentally found a little rooftop that it couldn't climb onto, so I lured it over and killed it from above. After all the shenanigans, I finally entered the palace. I fought my way through until I reached a massive courtyard full of dogs and soldiers from all sides. Things were not looking good, but I fought until I reached the control panel and shut the Napnudger down. When I woke up, the orderlies had arrived first. Morg invited me to join him alongside Oracle, and once again, he just wanted to talk. Turns out Morg was actually one of the original Trailblazers, and through him, I learned about the scientist leader Yaz, who hijacked the sphere to control the minds of his own soldiers and build his own private army. That same mind influence created the Blessed, who eventually turned into the zombies who were roaming the zone. Then a cutscene revealed that Morg was the player we were controlling in the tutorial, and my mind was completely blown. Pun intended. Regardless, we had to stop Yaz from raising his army, and his lab was just ahead. The entrance was defended by a boss, another abomination that looked like a chunk of meat on two legs with no arms. It attacked by charging straight at me and using a beam whenever I got too far. Both attacks nearly one-shot me, and the trick was baiting it into charging into a wall. That stunned it for a few seconds and let me shoot the vials on its body. Once it took enough damage, I had to destroy the power sources on the wall while holding off waves of mutants. The fight was simple enough, and after some back and forth, the guard was dead. The lab itself was pretty easy to get through. Most of the difficulty really came from the guards in the hallways. Yaz definitely knew we were coming, but after everything we'd been through up to this point, a shootout in a hallway was a walk in the park. One elevator ride later, I reached the mad scientist and the blue sphere. Yaz was not happy to see me, and after a short, not so friendly chat, the squads of Morg and Shaman showed up to the scene. That's when Yaz ran off and left the sphere behind, leaving the game's ending up to me. I could destroy the sphere like Morg wanted, or trust Shaman that its powers could do some good in better hands. Both sides had good arguments, but in the end, I didn't think an artifact like this should exist at all, so I sided with Morg. Shaman tried to stop me and wrap the sphere in energy as mutants started flooding in the room. This section was pretty rough, and I did die a couple of times, but with Morg's help, we actually managed to beat them. I didn't realize it at the time though, but the real objective was to actually bring the columns down onto Shaman. That's when he took control of the sphere himself, protected by a force field. He started shooting energy at us along with some mutants. This was a war of attrition, where finishing one wave only bought me some seconds to break Shaman's shield and chip away at his health bar. He didn't hurt too much though, and after a few minutes of surviving and trading shots, I eventually brought Shaman down. With him defeated, I did what Morg wanted and the blue sphere was destroyed. Morg had achieved his goal and could finally leave the zone, but Yaz was still out there somewhere and he wouldn't stop. For now though, my journey is complete and that's where this video ends. Let me know down in the comments if you'll attempt this challenge yourself, and thanks again to STALZONE for sponsoring this video.